But first, cancer. It's the illness we probably all fear most. We all know somebody who's had it or someone who's battling it. Over the years, I've reported on countless alternative therapies and cancer quacks who've ripped people off and offered false hope. I guess I'm as sceptical as anybody. Well, 6 months ago, when we began investigating a remarkable Perth surgeon named Dr. John Holt and his radio wave cancer treatment, I was still sceptical. What makes Dr. Holt different, I guess, is that he didn't want any publicity. But we kept hearing from patients, and dozens of them, who insist that he has saved their lives when the rest of the medical profession had nothing more to offer.
3 weeks to 3 months.
6 months to live.
Your life's at stake. The stakes are pretty high.
Do you owe your life to Dr. Holt?
Oh, every day of it. Every day of the last 28 years. There was just no way I could have lived. It was just impossible. Just couldn't have happened.
I just started university, so I was a little bit wild, enjoying life. I can't explain what that's like to be told. At 18 in particular, when you're supposed to just begin life, it's like everything had ended.
So frightening.
All my brothers were there.
I remember when the day that they took her down to take the leg off, and I was in the lift with her, and she was grabbing my hand saying, "Mum, please don't let them do it, please, Mum." I wanted to die that day.
Elvina Johnson had a lot of living to do when she was suddenly told she also had an aggressive form of bone cancer. But they didn't say it was terminal at that stage, did they?
No, but just, you know the word, and you know what usually happens. I started chemotherapy. Then I had to lose my leg, unfortunately. It wasn't something that we had planned or the oncologist had planned, but my cancer was so severe. After that, I continued on with chemo again, the heavy-duty stuff, and then I relapsed in the lungs while I was under chemo.
What, more cancer?
Yep, secondaries in the lungs. It was through both of my lungs, and by that stage it was pretty terminal.
Did they tell you that?
Yeah, their words were that I had a few months where I could either use experimental chemo more as palliative care, or I could spend some time with my family.
At 18, Elvina wasn't ready to hang up the guitar. Desperate, quite by chance, she heard about a cancer specialist in Perth, a highly qualified doctor with a highly controversial procedure.
But by taking that chance and finding this man, I'm here 6 years later and feeling better than probably I ever have.
Remember when we used to work in the garden together? She was a skeleton, very, very sick child, and a couple of times we thought we were going to lose her.
And I believe that Dr. Holt did save her life.
Well, somebody certainly saved Sophia. After 2 brain tumours and a spinal tumour, Sophia's family had almost given up. What did they say that this third tumour would do to her?
The worst, like paralysed.
As the tumour would progress to increase the size of the spinal cord, it would cut off. Her lungs use would not function anymore, so she would eventually...
Wouldn't be able to breathe and so on.
Wouldn't be able to breathe, it would kill her.
Did they say that they had any cure for that they could treat it in Sydney?
They couldn't do nothing.
Did they give you any sort of time span?
Anything from a couple of months to 6 months at the longest.
One doctor said to me, "Don't even take Sophie as far as Perth because she won't even make it."
Sophie, so be careful, okay? Right?
Today, 2 years after they went to Perth, the only signs that Sophia ever had cancer are the side effects from the massive doses of chemotherapy she was given in Sydney. Charlie Teo, Sophia's doctor and one of the world's preeminent brain surgeons, told her parents to give Dr. Holt a go.
I didn't know much about Dr. Holt, but I did know that a few patients of mine had been there and he'd helped them. So I felt that I should keep an open mind to it, and I said, just try it.
So what happened when she came back after the treatment from Dr. Holt?
Well, she came back in a good clinical state, and in fact, her MRI scan showed that those white dots that were getting bigger had disappeared.
How do you explain that?
Well, it's hard, Ray. I mean, I'd like to say that it was the microwave therapy, and it probably was.
The first day I said to Mum that I felt like I knew how a vegetable felt when it was getting cooked, or a French fry.
Or a French fry. In layman's terms, what this highly qualified surgeon does, and has been doing for 30 years, is give the patient an injection of a glucose-blocking agent. He then shines radio waves into the body at a specific frequency. Dr. Holt doesn't guarantee it will cure every cancer, but it's not expensive and there's no quackery about it. It's not painful and there are no side effects.
No side effects. Well, sure, when you're in there, it's very hot for about half an hour and you get a bit tired for about an hour after, but then we went sightseeing for the rest of the afternoons.
When I first walked in, I thought, well, hold on, where's all the pain? I mean, you get a little bit warm and you get a needle and that's it. So I'm thinking, okay, something's going to happen any second. I'm waiting for it, and nothing ever did.
Now, remember, Alvina had what was called a galaxy of tumours. She was riddled with cancer. First her leg, then in quick time, it moved into her lungs and was threatening her heart. That was 6 years ago.
I'm stronger than I think I ever have been.
But you have had any side effects from the Dr. Holt treatment that you know of?
No, none. No.
No. But other side effects from the chemo?
Yeah, the usual side effects that people get with chemo. That kidneys and my heart needs to be checked often, and I've lost some hearing in my ears, things like that, just from the actual drugs, but nothing from Dr. Holt's.
So who is this mystery medicine man that they're all talking about? Well, his name is Dr. John Holt. He was born in Bristol, England, 80 years ago. He was a boy genius, and he went on to become a surgeon, a radiologist, a gynecologist, and an obstetrician. He's a member of the Royal Colleges, and he's got 22 medical letters after his name. For more than a decade, he was in charge of WA's main cancer research institute, until the 1970s, when his medical colleagues and the politicians blacklisted him.
The doctors took up such an action initially. They said that the treatment was a fake and useless.
Former WA Labor Premier John Tonkin was the exception. He was Holt's greatest supporter, even though it cost him his job. The new government of Sir Charles Court quickly banned the use of Holt's machine in Perth's public hospital. Still, Tonkin told this program back in 1990 he owed his life to Holt's controversial cancer treatment.
There's no doubt whatever in my mind that this is the most advanced form of cancer treatment in the world today.
John Holt has been so badly mauled in the processes. If I'd have been through his experience, I'd have been stark staring mad, I guess, because this man undoubtedly has been deliberately crucified, and he didn't deserve it.
John Wickham used to be town clerk for the city of Wollongong. John Steinke was the Dean of Commerce at Wollongong University. Old mates and old cancer victims, they owe their lives to Dr. Holt. For the best part of 20 years, they've been trying to tell their story.
My urologist said, I don't know what your man in Perth has, but he obviously has something. Because when you went away, you had a thriving tumor, and that's 18 years ago. There has never been any sign of reoccurrence.
Has no one offered an ear to you, John?
No. And nobody, as far as I'm concerned and as far as I can find out, nobody in the last 15 years has talked to John Holt.
It's an unproven form of cancer treatment, and it's not part of the armoury of orthodox ways of treating cancer in Australia.
Clive Deverell was the boss of the WA Cancer Council for 20 years. The terrible irony is that Clive is now also suffering from an incurable cancer.
I've seen them all over 20 years of working in this field, from Dr. Milan Brick, who was again claimed as a genius.
But Holt's not a quack.
Certainly not. He's a very highly qualified doctor. He's a physician. He's an expert in radiotherapy and physics. But he still hasn't produced the scientific evidence.
After years of attacks and vilification, with threats of legal action and even deregistration, you'd expect that he might be a bitter and twisted old man. Well, he's not. But if Dr. Holt can do what he and hundreds of his cancer patients say he can do, then why hasn't he been recognised? Well, we don't know the answer to that. What we do know is it's been a long medical and scientific standoff.
It's been torrid. We've seen one man being vilified by his peers, being persecuted as he saw it by the National Health and Medical Research Council.
This vitriolic attack, written in 1974, concluded that Dr. Holt's therapy was ineffective and undesirable, but it was also harmful. The NH and MRC now tell us the report has long been out of date, In fact, this is the only copy in existence, collecting dust in the Fremantle Hospital Library. But for 30 years, it's badly damaged, maybe even irreparably damaged, Dr. John Holt's reputation.
As a human being, as a father of children, as someone who I hope is reasonably compassionate, I have no problem with it. As a scientist, I should have a problem with it because before I endorse a treatment, I should insist on seeing the scientific data.
What if he's right? Where does that leave the Cancer Foundation?
I can't answer for the Cancer Foundation, but I can answer for myself as a cancer patient. It would be a crying shame.
But Clive, if Dr. Holt is right, that's the sort of thing that they win Nobel Prizes for.
Certainly right.
Sometimes I think maybe Sophie's reason for getting sick was so people would know about Dr. Holt.
Beautiful face. Remarkable story, isn't it? As we said, how come we don't know about it? As we said earlier, Dr. Holt didn't want any of this publicity. He hasn't spoken to the press, I guess, for 15 years, and he's never done a television interview. So it took us many months to persuade him to finally talk to us.
Its great advantage is that what I do has no side effects.
For the first time in 2.5 years, the tumours hadn't grown.
Welcome back. You've heard some amazing testimonials from his patients, and you're probably wondering what Dr. Holt charges for this treatment. Well, after all the rebates that can be claimed on Medicare, on average, it's a bit over $1,000 for 3 weeks of treatment. It's pretty obvious that Dr. Holt is not after money or fame, and with no side effects from his therapy, he certainly deserves a better deal from the medical establishment than he's had so far. Dr. Holt, thank you for your time.
Pleasure.
Now, a lot of people we've spoken to believe that you saved their lives. Did you do that?
I hope so, yes. That's what I aim to do. I think so.
Have you succeeded, though, where other specialists haven't?
Oh, undoubtedly.
Does it please you? Does it satisfy you to think that these people see you as a miracle worker, as a saviour?
Oh, yes, it's very gratifying. But it really is nothing more than the chance discovery of a machine that would make X-ray therapy universally effective.
In person, John Holt is quietly spoken, old-fashioned polite, and surprisingly humble for a man whose patients worship him. Are you more convinced today than you were 30 years ago that you're on the right track?
Absolutely.
Do you think that what you're doing is far superior to chemotherapy?
Its great advantage is that what I do has no side effects. I've tested the blood function, the biochemical functions, liver and kidneys of every one of the patients that I've used it on, which is many thousand, and I haven't found a signal abnormality.
Would it be fair to say that a majority or many of your cases, you're really getting people as a last resort? They're on death's doorstep anyway?
Most of them are, yes.
I've had 2 years of chemotherapy, radiotherapy and surgery, 5 different types of chemo, and 6 months ago I was told there's nothing more for me.
This is just a tiny part of a nationwide support group we've spoken to over the past 5 months. They all insist that they owe their lives to Dr. Holt.
For the first time in 2.5 years, the tumours hadn't grown. Everything was stable.
I had no choice. I was going to have my bladder out.
And had you been told that you were...
6 months to live.
Where was your cancer? Or what kind?
The mesothelioma.
From asbestos?
Yes.
How long ago was that?
In 1991, beginning 91.
The first day that I went to see Dr. Holt, I was sitting in his waiting room. I must have looked rather nervous, and there's an old lady sitting opposite. And she said, "Don't worry, dear." She was Italian. She said, "Look at me." She said, "They told me to go away and die. I had cancer of liver." She said, "Look at me 10 years later, baby, you'll be all right," like that. And I thought, well, isn't that fantastic?
Now, they all think he's fantastic.
Very scientific approach.
Dr. Holt's support group has spent 20 years writing to health ministers, cancer experts, prime ministers and premiers. But all their letters have been ignored or rejected. In 1991, the WA Cancer Council finished its long trial of Dr. Holt's treatment. It cost them $136,000. Dr. Holt says it was a bogus trial, just the latest in a long campaign to try and discredit him. He says it was conducted under duress, that they chose an unsuitable cancer, a rectal cancer, and that the scientist didn't even understand how his treatment works.
There are some of the cancers like lymphomas and Hodgkin's disease and some of the early breast cancers, and particularly bladder cancer, which respond magnificently.
Do you ever say you can cure cancer?
No.
Why not?
Well, you may not.
They were massive. You'd feel the tumours and they'd be as hard as rocks. You know, they were like granite. And then after you'd have a treatment, there'd be a softness. They were disappearing.
That's 28 years ago.
That's 28 years ago, yes.
It takes a great deal of desperation to go to a practicing expert, an oncologist, a specialist, and then say, well, I don't believe what you're going to say. I'm going to go and see someone who you reckon is a charlatan.
Well, our nursing friends are sceptical. You try to explain it to them, there's no quackery about it. And Dr. Holt is definitely not a money man.
Oh, no.
You know, a lot of us think he should be called St. John. He's such a wonderful person.
Cancer is the biggest killer in Australia. Dr. Holt has been curing cancer victims, or at least making them feel better, for the past 30 years or so. And he's done it for next to nothing. In the same time, we've spent hundreds of millions of dollars on cancer research with very limited results. So what's it going to take for governments or the cancer councils or the cancer experts to finally recognise what this bloke does? Is it cynical? Is it too easy to talk about a medical conspiracy?
Well, I don't think it's a medical, it's a scientific conspiracy, I'm sure of that. I'm not sure about medical.
Is it frustrating to you? Is it disappointing to you? Is it upsetting?
Well, it was very upsetting, yes, at the time.
And now you've simply just water off a duck's back.
Oh, yes.
Do you wonder why? Do you scratch your head after all these years?
No, I've learned to shut up and practice in peace and quiet and try and get the best I can, and I'm getting towards it. What I'm doing now is the most interesting thing I've ever done in my life, and frankly, I don't want to leave it alone, despite the fact that I'm getting old.
You don't feel like you should go on the front foot? You've done all that. You've now just decided to let those disbelievers go on disbelieving.
Yeah, sooner or later they may get cancer.
Do you look back on those 30 years that you've done this research with pleasure, with satisfaction, or with frustration?
Oh, great satisfaction.
Yes, indeed, as you should. A remarkable bloke. At the very least, it's time that our health authorities arranged a proper scientific trial of Dr. Holt's treatment. It's soon going to be lost to Australia because it seems he is going to move to Ireland. He is, after all, as we said, approaching 79 years of age. And there's more on that story at our website. There's the address right down, or as usual, you can give us a call or write me a letter. Tell me about your personal experience with Dr. Holt, and we'll tell our audience about that. Welcome back. Our story last night on Dr. John Holt has done what should have happened years ago, I think. It's brought Dr. Holt's work to national attention. Our medical authorities and even our governments may now be forced to sit up and take notice of a man who's been so shamefully ignored for so long. Our phones and our faxes and our emails, as I showed you, have been in meltdown right around the country since last night. It was the same story at Dr. Holt's support group and at his clinic in Perth. Have a look at this.
We've had the 6 phone lines ringing, we've got extra staff in, we're absolutely packed, we've got people in the waiting room out in the lift since 7 o'clock this morning, and we're absolutely overwhelmed with the fabulous support that we've had.
I have been having treatment for bowel cancer, and I've been told there's nothing more that can be done, so just come with the hope that maybe I can get some treatment.
He's 3.5. He's got a brain tumour and disease in the spine as well.
My son Sean's 19 and has had a cyst on his lung, and turned out to be quite severe, rare cancer. So we'll give him any hope that we can have.
I mean, outside there is absolutely packed.
I have only sufficient equipment to treat about 12 patients a day at the absolute maximum. But I'm afraid we should have to tell them all to go away because we just can't cope with them, let alone take anybody else on.
I mean, we were told about Dr. Holt about 18 months ago when my son was diagnosed, and you get bombarded with a lot of information and things, and you just don't know where to turn half the time.
I'd heard about it about 7 or 8 years ago when a friend in England had actually rung me. His wife was very ill, and we asked a couple of doctor friends, and they said, no, not worth trying.
pretty angry, especially if it's worked, if it's been something that's been an effective treatment. Yeah.
People's ignorance is fascinating, but the more knowledge you get, the greater ignorance can become.
The phone's going non-stop at home until almost midnight. And today it's been colossal. They've even invaded my son's surgery because he's the same name as myself and they think it's the same firm. But it's not. But it's been enormous, and I'm trying to sort through all the faxes that have come while my staff interview all the people who've come.
I really hope that what comes out of this is the support that Dr. Holt deserves, absolutely, and that perhaps there's some hope that we're not going to lose this terrific therapy in the future. That's my biggest concern.
When will you retire?
Oh, I don't know, sometime in the future.
And what happens then? Your system, the procedure just goes into history?
I was very lucky in that a general practitioner needed my services who was out working up in north of West Australia some years ago. So he went back to Ireland and he's opening up a clinic there now, which I'm setting up and doing for him. And so there'll be a clinic somewhere in Ireland.
So once you stop, presumably we'll have to fly to Ireland to get.
You can all go to Dublin, yes.
It's a sad thought, isn't it? His sons, incidentally, are orthopaedic surgeons, not cancer surgeons. So after that overwhelming response, where does the medical profession stand now on Dr. Holt and on his treatment? The president of the Australian Medical Association is Dr. Bill Glasson, and he joins us now from Brisbane. Dr. Glasson, thanks for your time. There are hundreds of people today lined up around Dr. Holt's clinic in Perth. Our phones and emails have melted down. Do you think this bloke might have something?
Well, I think the reality is that a lot of these people are desperate, Ray. These people have gone through traditional medicine and they've often come to the end of the road where traditional medicine hasn't worked. And I suppose we need to turn to somebody who we feel that might provide the answer. He's an eminently qualified doctor. He has a huge respect of a vast number of the medical profession and a huge respect of a vast number of the community at large.
It's quite clear, though, Dr. Glasson, that he's not after fame, he's not after fortune in this thing. He says, I've been bashed up by the medicos and the scientific fraternity for 30 years. Go away.
You're right. He's not in for the money, you're absolutely right. And he's got a treatment that basically has, I understand, little side effects. It's a safe treatment. He's dealing with people that, as I said, are desperate. They're at the end of the road. They've been told that traditional medicine will not work. And so I think he's giving these people hope, Ray. If nothing else with patients who've got cancer, if you can give them hope, that's a very, very powerful tool.
But, you know, he says we've spent in the Western world hundreds of millions of dollars on cancer research without any great breakthroughs. He says, I think I can cure cancer. Why doesn't someone come and ask me?
Well, I think that's the challenge. If Dr. Holt feels he can cure cancer, and everyone as doctors, and certainly people listening to this program tonight, as doctors, if we could find a cure for cancer, you know, we would think we've solved, you know, most of things in medicine. So I think that every one of us as oncologists, as doctors in general, want to find the cure. We are desperate to find the cure. We want to help our patients. And if Dr. Holt feels as though he has the solution, then we need to actually listen to him, listen to the evidence that he puts forward, and look at appropriate trials that underpin, I suppose, the opinion that he has.
It's a bit like you're guilty until proven innocent. Why doesn't the AMA, why doesn't the government, why doesn't the Cancer Council come to him and say, look, you seem to have some fairly remarkable results, let's have a look at what you're doing, rather than wait for him to come to you?
Yeah, I think you're right, Ray, and I think probably out of the program last night and tonight that there'll be a lot of, I suppose, pressure on all groups to actually look at the data, look at what has been tried around the world, and look specifically at Dr. Holt's data and see whether we need to put funds into the system to, you know, put proper scientific trials in place so that, as I said, we can support or prove one way or the other whether this treatment works or not.
Dr. Bill Glasson, I know that I've pulled you out of surgery. I appreciate your time. Thanks very much for your comments.
Thanks, Ray. Thanks very much indeed. Good evening.
And we'll keep pushing for some action on Dr. Holt and his treatment. We would love to hear of your own experience. Please drop me a note. Okay, to Dr. John Holt again. Over the last week or so, we've brought you the remarkable story of this highly qualified surgeon in Perth. He's been treating thousands of cancer patients for 30 years now with astonishing success. The success stories have all been anecdotal because, apart from 2 questionable studies, The cancer and medical establishments in Australia have totally ignored Dr. Holt's treatments. 79-year-old Dr. Holt has never shown his controversial radio wave therapy to anyone before, except, of course, to his patients. Well, tonight, he's agreed to show us.
I've never seen anything like it in all the years I've been here. It's just unbelievable. We've had about 300 faxes overnight in just the 6 hours we've been away, and
huge
you know
mail.
we've got mail sitting there that we just can't get to.
It's just after dawn in West Perth, but the world of cancer sufferers can't wait.
I'm exhausted. So am I. Good morning, Dr. John Holt's rooms.
Another fax for you, Dawn.
Thank you. Okay, this is just in the last 8 hours.
It's a 3-week course of treatment that we do, and basically, in order to assess you, what we'll need you to do once you have a read of the information...
Nikki and Dawn, his nurse, have worked in Dr. John Holt's clinic for years. After our story last week, their lives have been turned upside down, with hundreds of patients lining up every day, thousands of phone calls, and an endless pile of emails, all asking for help.
Hello.
Yeah, hello.
Well, I've got a delivery of about 5,000 emails, and it's only half of what we've received. 90% of the emails are people who chemo can't work for anymore, and the medical profession have turned their backs on them, and they're looking for some kind of hope.
Desperate, sad?
Both. Horribly sad, horribly desperate.
6 years ago, Elvina Johnson had what her oncologist called a galaxy of tumours. She lost a leg and was given weeks to live. She credits Dr. Holt with saving her life. That's why today she runs the support group.
When I was diagnosed, I did all the chemo. I did the amputation, I did the chemo again, I did the lung operation, and then when I relapsed for the second time, there wasn't any hope for me. So then when I went to Dr. Holt, I got a new lease on life, I guess.
I wondered how you'd go. Yeah.
Elvina has now been cured of her cancer, but she's back in Perth with her mother and a much-loved grandma. Granny has advanced breast cancer. She's never had chemo or any other treatment except Dr. Holt. This is her third visit, and MRIs show that the cancer is getting smaller.
Look at me. I've just turned 89, and I discovered I had cancer of the breast.
Yeah, I know. I think that machine's very good for Mum's face. I'm going under.
Today, Dr. Holt is going to treat you for 8 minutes, 3 times each, okay? After the first 8 minutes, I'll stop and give you a little drink and a wet face wash if you need it. Okay? And are we ready to go?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Is it a case of thousands of people around Australia clutching at straws?
Well, they're certainly clutching for something. I would hate to think that what I do is called a straw, but for a lot of the people who have come and seek help, they're untreatable.
Dr. John Holt has extraordinary qualifications. A surgeon, oncologist, gynecologist, obstetrician and radiotherapist, he's a member of all the Royal Colleges. He was also in charge of WA's cancer research for more than a decade, until medical politics drove him out. For the past 30 years, he's been in private practice helping cancer sufferers.
You can cure approximately 25%, 30%.
Cure?
Palliate the rest of the people I select.
But you don't normally tell people I can cure you. You simply say, we'll have a go.
No. Yes, that's right.
I can live with that.
The maximum number of treatments I've ever had to give anybody has been 7 over 2.5 years, and we finally got there.
Right.
So it's a question of finding the exact technique which fits the individual person best.
Now, you don't feel clearly that you're wasting your time?
Not at all. No, how could I with my results, which are, after 7 months now, still stable, still absolutely fine. I still have no symptoms. I'm still living a great quality of life.
Jackie, but was there a time when Dr. Holt said to you he could cure you?
No. No. He said, let's give it a go.
So how does Dr. Holt's treatment work? Well, he gives the patients an injection of a glucose-blocking agent. He then shines radio waves into the body at 434 megahertz, which sensitizes the cancer cells. The blocking agent then starves the cancer. Now, you say you and your team could do 12 or 15 of these a day, that's all?
Well, that's the limit. Time you've injected them and done this, give them a rest period, a cool drink, sit under a fan to cool off. 12 is the limit of this apparatus.
Did you build that, Dr. Holt?
I built the table and all the antennae, yes.
It looks, excuse the phrase, it looks primitive. It looks very basic.
It is. They've all been like that. There's been very little change because it works.
For 30 years now, the media, as well as the medical establishment, has blasted Dr. Holt. And that's made him a bit gun-shy. That's why nobody has heard about him for years. But this past week, the attacks have started up again, and they're just as ill-informed. You know, the West Australian newspaper has again attacked Dr. Holt for using the Tornado machine. There were only ever 2 Tornados used in WA. One was broken up and sold as scrap metal, and the other one sits in mothballs down at the Sir Charles Gardner Hospital. The amazing thing is that Dr. Holt hasn't used the Tornado for more than 15 years. And it's more than 15 years since the AMA or the Cancer Council or the media have bothered to check out what he does.
I don't know the answer. I don't run the newspapers.
So you were just as happy to keep treating patients as they walked in the door and forget the media?
That's what I like doing for a living.
Their doctors have given them no hope. So we're not giving any false hope at all.
It's the last chance.
They're on their last legs.
And we'll keep on this Dr. Holt story for you. But first to Dr. John Holt. As we've told you over recent weeks, thousands of cancer patients have been cured or made to feel much better by his controversial treatment. Yet over the past 30 years, our politicians and the medical establishment have either vilified or ignored him. Now at last, it seems, that is changing.
Oh, I didn't feel real good. I just went out, looked up at the sky and said, because my brother died when we was 50 and he's up there, so I said, well, looks like I'm coming to join you, mate.
My Uncle Ted was very reticent to have his bladder removed.
I decided there's nothing they can do for me now, so I'll go down there and cark it.
I was very sceptical because I'm a WA trained doctor and I've been a doctor for 15 years, and when we went through medical school there was a very negative opinion put out there about this treatment.
And it showed that I had the cancer there, and there, and there. And then across my ribs and a great big one between my shoulder blades.
We were just absolutely amazed that the cancer just melted away. And I think he deserves a medal, not this negative approach from a lot of the medical profession.
I'm no professor or no scientist, but it just seems to me that when people have got no hope at all, government should be doing whatever they possibly can. Politics aside, I mean, this is people's lives we're talking about.
There has been some medical progress made in Western Australia with Dr. John Holt. He's a qualified and respected surgeon. In the more recent period, he's been treating dozens of victims of mesothelioma, and I think the government in New South Wales and nationally should examine this research to see if we can search towards a cure for this agonising disease that's decimating many working men and women in this country.
All in favour?
Aye. Aye.
National Executive of the CFMEU, the powerful union in charge of construction and mining, is now demanding that politicians do something about mesothelioma. That's the asbestos cancer that's killing hundreds of Australian workers. Meso is literally a death sentence. But again, Dr. Holt has had some success with this incurable cancer using his radio wave therapy.
And my experience is that they usually need 3 or 4 of treatment over a year.
Do you think this is the only treatment for mesothelioma?
Well, none of the other treatments that I've seen, from surgery right through to the cytotoxic chemotherapy, has been, in my opinion, of any value at all.
But again, you're confident that if you got them early, that you could make a difference?
Yeah, I'm certain of it. This was the X-ray she brought to me the first day I saw her, and the diaphragm should look like that, a nice curved piece, but instead it's filled up with the cancer there.
And now, today?
Well, 14 years later, she's got scarring between the various lobes of the lung and a little bit along the side, but the diaphragm has almost come back to normal.
But we keep being told that mesothelioma can't be cured.
Well, this is the only one that I can guarantee, I think, is cured. But I treated 14 patients between December 90 and January 97 with the same method, and there are 5 5-year survivals.
I did not want my children to end up...
Remember Emma from our first story? In 1990, she was diagnosed with mesothelioma, and she was given 6 months to live.
I just believe in Dr. Holt. He was the only doctor that gave me hope.
14 years later, Emma and husband Hank are giving some hope to WA Union boss Kevin Reynolds and all his members who are suffering asbestos cancer.
There seems to be no treatment at all, and people are just desperate. And we're seeing more and more of our members ending up with this horrible disease and dying.
I went to Holland after the first treatment to show my mum and dad that I was okay.
Still alive?
Still alive.
But Kevin, what do you say to your members who have mesothelioma?
What can you say? I mean, you've seen it in previous programs you've done, Ray. People are queuing to get in, and they just can't get in because it can only do 12 or 13 a month. I mean, you hang your head and cry.
I've had a rebirth. I've had a chance to live again. It's an amazing gift that he's given me.
There was just no way I could have lived. It was just impossible. Just couldn't have happened.
Over the past 6 months, we've met dozens of cancer sufferers of all ages from all over Australia. They say that they owe their lives to Dr. John Holt. The main criticism of Dr. Holt is that there's no scientific evidence that what he does actually works. In these files are the medical records of people who've come to see him over the last 18 months, and most of them were told that there was nothing that conventional medicine could do for them. In this drawer are the records of those who came here and didn't make it. But in these 2 drawers, more than 200 people are still alive today. Now, this may not be scientific evidence, but it's a fact.
I'm still living a great quality of life.
Jackie and 89-year-old Elvina have just finished their 3 weeks of therapy. And so far, so good. Their cancers are under control. Hundreds of Dr. Holt's other patients from the last 13 years are filed away here. Patients like Ted Swindles.
That's one thing I like about him, is that he doesn't lie. He doesn't sort of tell you you're going to get well and all this. He said, you've got a good chance. I think if you got no chance, he would tell you.
73-year-old Ted hails from Geelong these days. He was riddled with cancers: bladder, chest, back and head. Sceptical, he went to Dr. Holt as a last resort.
The bone scan showed without question that all of those areas which were multiple lesions through the skull, his spine and his groin area, they all melted away like magic.
Dr. Catherine Bocelli is Ted's niece. A practising GP, like so many other Perth doctors, she'd been told to stay clear of John Holt's controversial therapy.
I actually went with my uncle in the early stages to meet Dr. Holt. He's a lovely man. He's willing to share his knowledge and ideas. He's not money oriented. He charged my uncle very little money, particularly when he came back for further treatment.
There's a big business in cancer treatment.
Dr. Alex Boyd is a specialist in women's breast care. Like Dr. Bocelli, she's now sending her patients to John Holt. Already, she says, there are signs of success with 2 women.
It'd be wonderful if he's found out to be right. And I think that he could change the way we treat cancer in this country.
Why has he operated so quietly?
Well, if you were a little turtle and every time you put your head out of your little shell and somebody whacked it, how often would you be putting your little head out to be whacked?
Well, I think he's still putting his little head out, isn't he? You may remember that the Federal Health Minister, Tony Abbott, promised us some weeks ago that he would ring Dr. Holt. Well, this afternoon he finally made that call. He said he has now asked the National Health and Medical Research Council to take a look at how Dr. Holt's radio wave therapy works. Mr. Abbott says this review is, quote, a priority. So after 30 years, that's quite a development. Okay, hot off the presses here in Perth, there is some good news about Dr. John Holt and the cancer treatment he's used to save thousands of Australians over the past 30 years or so. First, the Cancer Council of Australia says that it would welcome an evidence-based review of Dr. Holt's work, which of course is what Dr. Holt wants as well and has wanted. Second, and this has just reached us, the Royal Australian College of Radiologists has told Dr. Holt it's now willing to put together an expert panel to review all of his patient records. That would establish whether there's a case for a structured medical trial. Let's hope there is. So something is happening at last, but those developments weren't on the table today when we spoke to Dr. Holt earlier about what has been a most amazing week. Dr. Holt, it's been a big week. Did you expect this avalanche?
Oh, yes, I did. I had it before.
Is it a case of thousands of people around Australia clutching at straws?
Well, they're certainly clutching for something. I would hate to think that what I do is called a straw, but for a lot of the people who come and seek help, they're untreatable because they've had so much cytotoxic chemotherapy that I probably won't get a response.
What, too much chemotherapy and you can't handle it?
It's the fact that it alters the normal cells, and you may not be able to find any electrical difference between the cancer and the normal after certain types and certain doses of chemotherapy.
I've seen from the emails that we've had, and I've talked to people even on the plane coming across here today, they're so desperate. How do you say, I can't help you?
You've got to tell them the truth, that they can come here and have treatment, but probably there'll be no positive results, and that's a waste of 3 weeks of their precious time and life.
Are you convinced that what you do cures cancer?
Oh, I'm absolutely certain that in people in whom you can get enough dosage either of X-rays, particularly X-rays, there's no question if you use radio waves for X-rays, you can undoubtedly cure cancer, yes.
It's a big call.
How do you mean?
Well, the sense to say that you can undoubtedly cure cancer is like a revolution. It's an extraordinary statement.
The mathematics are incontrovertible.
What would you figure is your success rate with the treatment that you have?
You can cure approximately 25%, 30%.
Cure?
Palliate the rest of the people I select.
But you don't normally tell people I can cure. You simply say, we'll have a go.
No. Yes, that's right.
But you now say that the end result has been 25%.
Something like that. If you had X-ray therapy as well, you could probably double that.
You know that the top cancer research institutes in this country say that what you're doing doesn't have any effect. And these are the men and women we regard as the experts.
Well, to me, they're ignorant.
But that's not enough, is it? Let's say that they are open-minded. Let's say...
Okay. Then, in September 1975, I asked for a clinical trial of using UHF with X-ray therapy on the treatment of head and neck cancer. Let's go back and do that. You can do that easily. There's plenty of people with head and neck cancer. And
how long would that take, you think?
Enough to get a couple of hundred patients and enough to wait and see what happened. But
a year or so?
Yeah, a couple of years.
And you know they say to us, of course, the cancer experts say, well, that's to be expected. All he's getting, what you don't hear about are the people who died.
Well, a lot of my patients will die. As I say, I never claim to cure anybody, but there are certain situations which since I've treated 50,000 cancer patients in my life, I've got some fair idea of the ones that might work.
Now, have you heard from Tony Abbott?
No.
No phone calls?
No.
Have you heard from the AMA?
No.
Have you heard from the West Australian Health Minister?
No.
That's pretty much business as usual. What you've had for the last,
standard, yes.
Last 30 years of that.
Sure.
You've never shown on television what your therapy is, have you?
No.
Could we have a look?
Yeah, of course.
Nothing to hide?
No, you can go in and lie up on the couch yourself, because it's quite a pleasant feeling, like lying on the sand and getting a nice warm sunbathe.
Is that...
You do get warm.
But if I don't have cancer, that's all I do, just get warm.
You just get warm, yes. But if you've got cancer, then you get a specific effect upon the cancer cell, and it will actually talk back to you. Because if you shine on 434 megahertz, the cancer will create another frequency and shine it back to you.
So we can do that with you?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Now, Dr. Holt's family tell us that he's a tired but a happy man. At least he has been recognised at last all these years.